Hey everyone, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Smart Diode Wiring Kit for vehicles that have LEDs. Before we do that though, let's just take a minute and check this out. So tow bar wiring is going to be one of the major components that you're going to need to flat tow your Jeep down the road safely behind your motorhome. The other four parts will be your base plate, your tow bar, your safety cables, and your supplemental braking system. What the tow bar wiring is going to do is transfer the lighting functions from the back of your coach to the back of your Jeep, keeping you safe and legal. So like you just saw, we had our left turn signal go in, and that's because we're plugged into our test box, which is simulating a motorhome, and the left turn signal is going on here. So it gives you a good idea on how everything gets sent back there. The same is going to hold true for your right turn, your brake lights, as well as your tail lights. There's quite a few different variations of tow bar wiring available, I guess you could say, and I feel like these smart diodes are probably your safest bet to work with all the different types of applications. And I say it because these will work if your vehicle has the park sense feature on it, if it doesn't have park sense, regardless on how your Grand Cherokee set up as far as options and stuff like that goes. The smart diode kit is going to work. And not to mention too, it's a little less intrusive. You don't have to cut into too many wires and things like that compared to some of the other ones. And we've done a ton of these smart diode kits on all different types of makes and models, and they're extremely reliable. It's pretty rare that you run into any issues with them, and even if you do, it's usually something very minor. So kit you really can't go wrong with. Now, as far as the smart diodes for LEDs go, there's going to be two variations of it. All right, one of the kits will come with your wiring, your diodes, kind of some ins and outs to get it installed, but it's not going to come with the 6-way round connector plug or an umbilical cable here. And so that kit would probably make the most sense for those of you who already have those components. Good example today, our neighbor is flat towed before, already had an umbilical, and so he just picked up a 6-way of his choice that worked with the kit. A lot of times too, some of the more premier tow bars and things like that, if you're kind of starting from scratch, will come included with the cable and the connector, like the Roadmaster Nighthawk, for example. So if that's your situation, kind of the more bare bones diode kit would make sense. However, if you don't have the cable or the connector, or your tow bar don't come with them, there's a kit that comes with the same diodes, the wiring, all those ins and outs, as well as the connector and umbilical. So that's what I would go with if that's the situation you find yourself in. Other than that, that's really all there is to it. Like I said before, it's probably the safest bet as far as picking out tow bar wiring goes for the Grand Cherokee. The fact that it works with everything and is overall a good fit for it. When it comes to the installation side of things, it's really not too bad. It's definitely time consuming, just having to route a wire from the front all the way to the back and kind of go through all that, but take your time. It's something you only have to do one time, right? With that said though, if this is something you don't want to mess with, or you plan on doing a bunch of other components at the same time, you can always use our dealer locator network, and that can help you find a shop in your neighborhood that can set something like this up for you. But if you're going to do it yourself, hang around. We'll go ahead and get started on it now. To begin our installation for our diode wiring, the very first thing that you can do is take your big bundle of wire and drop one end of it down through the engine compartment, and we can route it over to where our connector plug is going to be on our base plate. So it's just loosely routed now through here, coming over where I have it coming out right here. And this red wire, this is a separate component. It's for a battery charge line kit. I definitely suggest doing all that type of thing at the same time, since you're going to be working in this area anyway and have the connector apart. And on another note, so I do have the fascia removed right now, and we're doing that because we did it at the same time that we're doing our base plate here, which is definitely what I recommend. It gives you a lot more room to see and work. It can be done with everything put back together, just takes a little more time. And the way our particular vehicle's set up too, we want to get our wire routed, and then the opening is so small on our fascia that if we hook the actual connector up right now, we won't be able to get it back on. So I have this routed over here. I'll get the fascia on, that way our wires will pass through it and we can then hook our connector up. So I got our fascia on now. You can kind of see what I was talking about. You know, if we hooked all these up to our bracket or to our connector first, ain't no way the fascia would have gone back on. We'd have to take it all back apart. So I did it that way. But what you want to do, which ours kind of just started coming apart, is you want to separate the wires into individual strands. So you just very carefully cut in between them, kind of peel them apart a little bit. And then we'll take our dust cover, put that over all the ends. And then we want to strip each end back a little ways. And give the wire a twist, and that'll make it, you know, ensure that we'll have a good connection when we hook this up. With all of our wires ready now, we can hook them up. So the back here, the one in the middle, that's where I'm going to hook up our charge line to. You just back out that set screw. Put the charge line in place. Snug that down. And then, might be kind of tricky to see, but the rest of the terminals are going to be labeled. So this one here is labeled T for tail light, so the brown wire will go to it. This is G for ground, so the white wire goes there. L for left turn, yellow wire goes there. And R for right turn, so the green wire goes to that one. So we'll just continue on here. Putting all the wires into the appropriate terminal, snugging them down, and just work our way around. Here's what the back of our connector plug looks like once we have all of our wiring hooked up, our charge line as well as our diodes. And one thing I like to do, but I wait to the very end to do so, is I'll come back and put some silicone over all the terminals to help keep them sealed up and protected against corrosion. But I like to make sure everything's working properly first beforehand. That way if I need to get in here for any reason, it's not a big mess. So we'll just kind of temporarily put our boot back in place and secure this up to our base plate. Now we have everything hooked up in the front. We can come back to our wiring here in the engine compartment, and what we're going to do is cut just the white wire very carefully. Start to peel the ends apart from the rest of the harness, and the side that you want to work with is the side that's actually going to our connector plug here. So this is going to be a ground. We'll strip that end back and give it a twist. And what we'll do is take a ring terminal, we'll put that on the bare end of the wire, crimp it down, and this is how we're going to make all of our connections, whether it be a ring terminal, a butt connector, spade terminal, whatever the case may be. And I'm going to use this stud right here, so that'll work perfect. We'll just place it over that. And I actually had a nut that has the same thread pitch that was left over from our base plate installation that I'm going to use. If you don't have one, you can always remove that and put the ring terminal under it, tighten it down, or just take a self-tapping screw and secure it right here to this aluminum core support. But I'd rather not drill into anything if I don't have to. So I'm going to do it this way. Let's come back and tighten this down. As far as the remaining portion of white wire that's still attached to our harness, I'm just going to completely remove it, and we'll probably end up using this a little bit later on in the installation, so we'll hold on to it. And it'll also make our wiring easier to route. because this will have to get routed all the way to the back up into our tail light. So that out of the way, I'll go ahead, get this wire routed all the way to the back, and then show you the path that I took to get it there. I got our wiring ran, and I just brought it around through here. And I want to mention too, if you're going to be installing a braking system, supplemental braking system that requires you to tie in to your diode wiring, a lot of them do, leave yourself a little bit of extra slack up here in the engine compartment, make it easier when you go to do that. So that's what I did, but I just have it routed along through here, where it drops straight down along the firewall. And when you're doing this, there's a lot of parts here. There's not a whole lot of room, a lot of hot parts. So just be conscious of that. Take the best path down, trying to do your best to avoid those hot and moving parts. Underneath, here's where our wiring dropped down, and you know, where it kind of comes out from the engine compartment, I did put some wire loom on it. That's what this black cover is. Just give it an extra layer of protection. That just runs along through here, and there is a little panel with some 10mm head bolts kind of throughout. If you pop those bolts out, it makes this a lot easier. But I just followed these factory lines here, using some zip ties every now and again to keep it all secure and everything. So it just continues along. Right here. And what I did, I took the wiring in our subframe. I just fed the wire through the subframe, and since it's kind of, you know, going into some metal, I put some more loom on it for an extra layer of protection there. But so the wire is actually inside of the subframe, and that allows us to avoid all these moving parts and everything. And it might be a little tricky to see, but right here, that's where wiring comes out from the top of the subframe. There's a big hole in the top of it, so I pushed it up through there. There's not a lot of options here with the mufflers and everything being here, so the spare tire shield, I just drilled a small hole in it, push the wiring through there. That way it'll be on this side and away from the exhaust. And I just ran it to here. Now at this point, I separated the wires into individual strands, right? So the yellow one is going to run to the driver's side. And what I did with the brown one, I cut the brown one in half, put the short end, you know, the part that we cut off, into one side of the butt connector. And then on the other side of the butt connector, I put the brown wire in there, and then that extra piece of white wire that we saved. So I stripped both ends back, twisted them together, put them in one end there. So the brown and yellow, I just have it kind of sitting right here for the time being. The other end of our white wire and our green wire, that's going to run to the passenger side. Now I'll have to come back and zip tie this up a little bit. But it's just running over through here, where it comes out right up here in this area, just like the driver's side did. We can move up top now and get the taillights removed. So you'll have this little plastic panel here, and at the top of it, there's a little push pin fastener. I like to come in from behind it, kind of pry up on it. Using a trim tool, flathead screwdriver will work as well. That'll just pop free and set that to the side. Then we can grab a Torx bit. We're going to have a fastener there. I have a T30. Use to pull that out. We can get the light removed. So what you want to do, you'll kind of pull it this way a little bit. I'm just going to start to work it back and forth. Just be gentle doing this. There's a little alignment pin kind of on the front side of the light that's keeping this held in place. So that's what we're trying to pop free here. So That's what I was talking about there, those little pins. So we got that free, and we'll disconnect the tail light. You have a red tab. Push up on that and then down the black tab. We can set our light off to the side and do the same thing to get the passenger one removed. To get our new wiring up into the tail light pocket, I just used a fish wire. This is a piece of tubing that I had. You can use a metal coat hanger if you straighten it out, or even another piece of wire. I just dropped it from the top down, to where it comes out of the bottom, taped our wiring to it, and now I can start to pull up on the fish wire, and that will bring our wiring right into position. On the end of our wires, you can crimp on a red spade terminal. I did that to the yellow one. Do the same exact thing to the brown one. The kit's going to come with two little pieces of white wire, and these are going to be ground wires. So on one end, I crimped on ring terminal, the other end, a red spade terminal, and I'm going to ground this right here in this area using the provided self-tapping screw. What we can do now is find our tail light signal. And so back here, I think this is where we're going to tie into the wiring, but we need to figure out which wire we need to work with, right? So how I like to do this is take a test light, and I actually connect my ground for the test light to the ground that we just secured, and that'll kind of check that as well to make sure it's solid. But we're looking for the tail light signal, so I got our tail lights on, and I just have a little pin here. I'm going to probe each one of these terminals here. So that's where we're getting power. The rest of them, you don't have anything, so we know that's our taillight signal. And if we follow that back, the wire that we're going to be working with here will be this one. It's white with a gray stripe, and it looks like pretty much the same color wire on the other side. So if you were to look at the connector, you want to deal with the wire that's going to this pin here. We'll tie our diode in now, and with this being the wire we're working with, you want to turn your lights off too before you cut or anything. Put some tape around the other wires just so I didn't get them mixed up or anything. We'll cut that in half. Strip both those ends back. And just like the other wiring, we're going to crimp on these red spade terminals. Make sure we get a good bite on the wire there. These wires are pretty small from the factory. And as far as our diode goes, we're going to have several posts there, terminals there. The car in, we're going to put the factory wire there. Car out, factory wire closest to our actual connector goes into that. Ground, that's our white ground wire. And then we can take our new wiring. Since the brown wire will be for our taillight signal, put that there. And the yellow wire will go to RV break-in. Over here on the passenger side, I did more or less the same exact thing. The color of the wires will be a little bit different. The new green wire goes to RV break-in. The new white wire goes to RV tail-end. The factory wire that you want to work with will be white with an orange stripe. I know it's a little tricky to see, but that'll go into car in. The other end of the white and orange will go to car out. And then, of course, our ground was set up the exact same way that we did over on the driver's side. With everything hooked up, one thing I like to do is come back, take a little RTV silicone, and put it where the connections are made, just to help keep moisture and stuff from getting in there. You know, I feel like it kind of gives it a buffer too, makes these connectors a little more secure. And as far as how I'm going to secure this, there's some two-sided sticky tape in the back. I cleaned off the surface with some rubbing alcohol. I'm just going to stick the diode right there. And what we can do now, with all that done, make sure wires aren't in the way or anything. And go ahead, grab our taillight. We'll plug that back in, lock it down, and re-secure this the opposite way that we removed it. I got our passenger side light wrapped up the same way that we did the driver's side, and now it's a good idea to test the wiring to make sure that it's working properly. So I'm using a test box here, which is simulating a motorhome. You can always use your coach, but keep in mind, if your coach happens to have any issues on its own, it might mislead you, thinking it's something you did wrong on the vehicle side. But that in mind, let's make sure we get all of our signals. We'll try out our taillights, our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and our brake lights. With everything working, that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Smart Diode wiring kit on our 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee.